喂，
哦，好像可以直播哦。
有啊，有声音，有声音。
好像录过几句状况。
请输入网络研讨会答疑者的数字密码，然
好，我们要先请现场的同学，因为待会就是我们整个会议是线上的，那因为我们待会会让在国外的讲者看一下我们会场的一些状况，所以我们可能要请后面的同学，如果方便的话，我们尽量都移往到前面这。从第2排开始做可以吗？就是最后面的同学，我们就从第2排开始做，所以可能要麻烦你们移动一下。然后另外要提醒同学，就是因为刚刚有些同学有带食物或饮料进来，因为这个会场是不能饮食的，所以你们可能要留意一下饮料就不要把它打翻，要小心。那如果可以的话，可能要请后面的同学，我们如果可以就稍微再往前移，可以吗？好，如果没有人动，我就要开始请大家，就是后面的同学，可以吗？我请同学就大家都起立，全部一起帮我们往前移到这一排，可以吗？与会的同学，好，我们就请同学就都往前移到这里，因为今天的那个论坛时间不会太久，所以就好，因为讲者其实也看不到你们在干嘛啦，所以就是你们就可以往前吗？好，后面同学谢谢，就谢谢同学身先士卒帮我们就是往前，如果可以的话，我们就请同学尽量都往前，因为毕竟我们今天这是一个蛮大的会场，所以如果说让国外讲者看到我们太空旷的话，其实也是不太好意思。谢谢同学，麻烦你们就是如果可以的话，我们就尽量帮忙，我们尽量往前移动，至少到第3排好吗？至少到第3排，谢谢你们帮忙。然后我们后面进场的同学，我们就可能往前移动了，就是在前面的座位比较多，我们就在前面入座，谢谢大家。同学，我们前面还有座位，就尽量先往前面移动。这左边也还有位置。
支持人都有在现场。
我刚听时间多少？
现在还是
他的
同学晚安，对哈，这是一个比较特别的一个活动。这个活动呢，因为跟美国正在此时线上连线，对方在 Wisconsin， 所以现在是 in the morning， 很早的时候，所以呢，等一下啊，所以呢，好。所以我们都一直这样镜头看着你们哈，你们可以看到说这个镜头照到你们这个就是看到的是你们，好，不是故意一直要，OK， 所以等一下呢，在时间会非常的 tight， 好，非常的紧，所以呢，我们等一下会请那个杨处人帮我们做 opening 之后，然后我们还会有亚大那边的那个学务长。我是学务长那样子哈，所以那个 opening 之后，我们就会请我们的郭副校长介绍我们的Dr. Dempsey 是一个非常非常知名，然后有非常丰富的那个 medical service experience， 尤其是在overall 海外各地的地方。好，那所以我觉得今天学生一定可以学到很多。之后我们还会有分组在不同的地方。好，那所以。那同学就这整个过程中会是英文的，所以同学也会好好的学习英文的这个英文环境那样子。OK， 那所以看起来，那个 Dr. Dempsey 他要去跟他的团队稍微 check 一下一些事情，因为他之后还要门诊，好，因为他是一个 surgeon，neuro 的 surgeon。OK， 所以我们对啊。
So we will wait for Dr. Dempsey to come back, and then we will get started. Yep. I think we have quite a lot of students over here, so don't worry that we have enough students over here. Yeah. So everything will run very smoothly.
杨处长、马学长，请问，我们的亚洲大学的同仁也在线上了吗？
Yeah, I think Frank Chen should be the dean of students of affairs of Asia University. I saw his name, Frank Chen.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep. And also chief president of the, I think this is Chinese Youth Innovation Network Association. I think he is also online too. We will wait for Dr. Dempsey to come back, then I will get started. And the first I will introduce Vice President Zhang Guo to deliver welcome remarks, and then I will invite Dean Fred Chen to deliver welcome remarks, and then Chief President Ma, yeah. And then we will get started.
Shall I go last?
So Dr. Dempsey is back. Dr. Dempsey, welcome back.
Thank you.
So I think we
Thank you very much.
are ready to get started.
Wonderful.
Yep. So Dr. Dempsey, Vice President Zhang Guo, Dean Wei-Fen Ma, Dean Fred Chen, Chief President Rui-Chun Ma, distinguished guests, valued participants, and students of China Medical University and Asia University, good morning and good evening. Welcome to 2022 Distinguished University Lecture. In the beginning, I would like to invite Vice President Zhang Guo to deliver his welcome remarks. Vice President Zhang Guo, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dean Yang of our Office of Global Affairs at China Medical University. And I'll say something briefly, and then I'll be at the very end to introduce Dr. Dempsey before his talk. But it is such an honor to welcome you, Dr. Dempsey, to our two universities, among the top two universities in Taiwan, and our distinguished colleagues, and of course, all of our students, many of whom are in those lecture halls, but also up to 1,000 are participating across multiple, up to 3 or 4 campuses and online as well. So it is a pleasure to welcome you, and we'll hear from our sister universities before I do the formal introduction of our distinguished speaker today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President Zhang Guo. Next, I would like to invite Professor Fred Chen, Dean of Student Affairs of Asia University, to deliver his welcome remarks.
Okay, Vice President Guo, our distinguished guest, Dr. Dempsey, and Professor Yang, and my colleague from CMU, and all the participants, good evening. My name is Xiaoliang Chen. I'm a Dean of Student Affairs here at Asia University. It's my honor and a privilege to be invited to this great event. In fact, at this moment, we have more than 100 students here at Asia University are attending.
I think we lost him for a moment. He will be back soon.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Dempsey, Asia University is also in Taichung, which is central Taiwan and the second largest city. And they are on the southern edge of the city, about 45 minutes around the Beltline from us. One way that it is very similar to Madison in terms of the east side and the west side.
Okay.
Very soon.
Okay, so I think next I would like to introduce the Chief President Rui Chun Ma. Chief President Ma is the president of the Chinese Youth Innovation Network Association. I would like to invite Chief President Ma to deliver his welcome remarks. Chief President Ma, the floor is yours.
非常谢谢大家的参与，那也非常谢谢让我有这个荣幸来这边致辞。我想这天晚上的活动非常紧凑，而且非常的精彩。那我想就不耽误大家的时间，希望大家能够趁着这一次这么好的机会，能够好好的来学习，那收获良多。好，谢谢各位，预祝活动顺利成功。
Thank you very much, Chief President Ma. So before we get started our 2022 Distinguished University Lecture, we would like to take a group photo before we get started. So everybody be seated, and then we will take a group photo. Should I say 1, 2, 3? Oh, I think please sit tight, and then 1, 2, 3. I think we can take it one more. 1, 2, 3. So thank you so much. Thank you very much. So next, I would like to invite Vice President Zhang Guo to introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Dempsey. Vice President Zhang Guo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everybody. It is quite an honor for me to be able to do this once again. If I could have my privileges to share, please.
You could use your on the share button on the right hand side at the bottom.
Here we go. And again,
正在录制此会议。
honor to welcome Dr. Dempsey to our two sister universities and all of our distinguished guests, and most of all, our wonderful students. our wonderful students who are involved in distinguished public service here in Taiwan as well as even overseas for a learning experience with our master teacher, Dr. Robert Dempsey. Here you see some of the features of our campuses and world-renowned art museum on the Asia University campus, as well as architecturally winning awards, new campus being built here in Taichung for China Medical University. And I know, Dr. Dempsey, you would enjoy, given your architectural specialties and interests, touring our campuses when we get you to visit. Everybody, technology is making this possible. Dr. Dempsey has a very busy day ahead of him after spending a few hours with us this morning. And if he was flying to us, this would be how far he's flying across the world, because he himself has pursued a lifetime of worldwide impact in his work. And this is about 11,000 plus kilometers or 7,400 miles. And you would be able to come land in central Taiwan, where our campuses are, although our hospital systems reach across the entire island here. And what can I say about Dr. Dempsey? He has had a lifetime of education and mentoring, is one of the great role models and mentors in the world for not just neurosurgery, where he is a specialist in taking care of aneurysms, brain tumors, and has pioneered research with over 35 years of continuous federal funding in stroke mechanisms, molecular biology, as well as pushing forward the frontiers of understanding how vascular biology and cognitive abilities and dementia are very important to understand. Most of all, I value his being my role model and mentor for how much he puts himself in a line of service. He is nationally and internationally known for having served in major leadership positions in American and world neurosurgery. He has won major humanism and service awards, as well as is known as an amazing clinical teacher and voted Wisconsin awards by students there multiple times, as well as receiving the National Medical Student Teaching Awards and having the National Neurosurgery Organization name a resident award in cerebral vascular surgery after Robert Dempsey. But most of all, over the last almost 40 years, Dr. Dempsey personally and with his family have been engaged in bringing neurosurgery and medicine and healthcare to areas of the world that do not have sufficient equipment or knowledge or expertise. In fact, as chairman and president of the Foundation for International Education in Neurological Surgery, he is instrumental in establishing programs, over 20 of them in Central and South America, especially in Africa and also in Asia, to bring about education and service, infrastructure, and people to serve those that he himself feels so fortunate to help personally and leave a legacy where there is global health care in all the places and people that he touches. So it is really our honor to have you share with us today your speech about international public service, bi-directional lessons learned in global health. And I thank you so much for joining us at 6 o'clock in the morning there in Madison, Wisconsin. Dr. Dempsey.
It's my great pleasure, my great pleasure. I'm going to share my screen now and tell me if that is successful.
Yep, it looks great. We can see you very well, and we can hear you very well too. Yeah.
There, is that good? Very good. All right.
Looks
I
great.
want to start by thanking the staff, the faculty, the students of these great universities in Taiwan for this opportunity. I want to talk a lot about global health, but I want to talk to you, the students who are interested in medicine, nursing, medical technology, other services that care for patients, of how important this is and the lessons learned. But I don't want to just talk about things I learned on my journey. I want to talk about how do we learn, and the lessons I learned from global health, how I apply them. My molecular biology research, I believe, is part of global health, and I'll try to show that today. I was told early on by professors that I could not do global health in a specialty like neurosurgery. I try to prove that wrong because need is everywhere. And I also want to show that your participation in global health comes home to your own country just as much. I want to welcome everybody. It's morning here, good evening there. We're in Madison, Wisconsin, north of Chicago, in the middle of the country. And my topic talks about the fact that we are people who wish to go into healthcare, and to do so and to do it well. We practice healthcare, but we are dissatisfied and want to do it better. And that means we do research. And if we do something and it's good, we want to teach it. And that's how we become a complete doctor, nurse, technician, etc. And the basis of it is really quite simple. We like our patients. We wish to do better for them. And the lessons they teach us bidirectionally, we apply everywhere and every day. Now, all stories have a beginning. And this is my personal story. It starts in Chicago in the 50s and 60s, time after the Great World War, World War II, when this was a bustling, amazing, exciting place. It was amazing things took place. I lived in a small area which was surrounded by the factories that made the world. To the south, they made the diesel electric motors for the trains. To the east, they made all of the telephones in the United States and Europe. To the north, they made the tractors that farmed the land. There was an aluminum plant in my town. There were rail yards. This is where we worked. This is where I worked. I was a teamster. I was a forklift driver. I was a laborer. And I was happy. We had a wonderful family, and I owe that to my parents, who taught us about faith and family, but also they taught us two other things: the importance of service and the importance of effort. And those lessons stuck. And then some years later, I was building houses in a rural area of the United States, Appalachia, which is an area of great need and great poverty. And I discovered that wealth and poverty didn't exist just in the city, but in my own backyards, in the rural areas as well. I discovered the need wasn't just housing, it was medical care, which is something I was interested in. And I noted that need in the rural areas, even in my own country. And I met this gentleman here that I'm pointing to. This is the greatest carpenter I've ever met. He was so skilled, and he had joy in his work. And his work, carpentry, was his gift. And he did it with joy and skill. He would literally do it for nothing. And I learned that we all can be very good and serve in what we do if our attitude and service is there. And I learned by that lesson, my first lesson, how I learned was to stop and listen. Don't assume I know what's going on, and listen and look at verbal and nonverbal clues, because if you're a physician, this is what you do when you examine a patient. You listen to what they're telling you and how they tell you. And then an amazing thing happened to me. They're called scholarships. And I received scholarships to some of the best schools, university, med school, residencies in our world. And in that experience, I went from very, very poor schools where I was teaching myself to places where I was mentored. And I went back to Appalachia now as a neurosurgeon. And because I knew there was a tremendous need that I thought neurosurgery could serve in this impoverished area of coal miners, which was stroke. And I felt that neurosurgeons needed to be involved in the care of stroke because that's where the patient need was. And when I began to address that, my work began to be focused by patient need, and my particular skills, be they in research or teaching, could become better focused. And this had started 40 years ago when I began to do simple surgeries for stroke and avoiding strokes. And what I learned was if you wanted to improve, you in medicine would take a question, a problem, and you would go to the scientist of your time and you say, what are the tools of this time? And the times change, the tools change. But at each time we bring the tools of our science to our patients' needs. That's what research really is. It seemed so natural when I did it that way. And I began to look at stroke, and I realized that we were totally wrong in our concept about stroke. We as neurosurgeons were looking at aneurysms, a very small subset of hemorrhagic stroke, when the real need worldwide was ischemic stroke. And we had underestimated by 11-fold the number of strokes. We thought there were 1 million in the United States. When you look at imaging and you see the deficits on the images of people that you thought were normal as they age, you see that there are approximately 11 million strokes per year, many of them unrecognized until you began to look at cognition. Because we had oversimplified it. We had said, if you become weak in an arm, blind in an eye, or can't talk, that's a stroke. Yet now we realize that the smaller strokes have a devastating pre-Alzheimer's condition of decreased cognition, premature aging of the brain, so that creativity, judgment are lost, preceding Alzheimer's. And we began to look at what would cause that. And I put together the first real basic science stroke program. And I brought in scientists because I learned that I couldn't do it alone. I had to bring in the science of their time. And one brilliant person developed the nun study, this study of Catholic nuns where we had their entire medical history for their life. And we discovered, interestingly enough, that although very few of the nuns at death were demented, a large number of them had the pathology of Alzheimer's disease without the physiology, unless they had had a stroke. That would double their rate of cognitive decline. And I began to understand that stroke and cognition were an important need for vast majorities of people. This was a big project worth studying. And the tools at that time were very crude because I was studying atherosclerosis, the hardening of thickening of artery walls that block vessels, cause heart attacks, cause kidney failure, cause strokes, the vast majority of strokes. And all of our imaging of that time was of the lumen, the blood going down the vessel. Here you can see that the disease is in the wall of the vessel, as this I'm pointing to is an atherosclerotic ulcerated stroke. And the disease wasn't just blockage, it was pieces breaking loose going to the brain to cause strokes. And I did wonderful projects. I could tell you, if you told me how much you smoked, I could tell you how thick these vessels had become. If you told me how thick they had become, I could tell you the odds that you'd had a heart attack. I could improve my surgical skills. Here you can see my suture line. And I could restore vessels to normal and keep them that way. This was the science of the time. This was good. It was insufficient. When we took it, we combined the two. We began to look at the nuns to see, did atherosclerosis appear inevitably? We found that as people aged and oxidized their cholesterol, yes, it began to appear. And we could accelerate that by inherited lipid problems or smoking or diabetes. And then we said, well, if cholesterol is the problem, because we crudely thought it was just the amount of cholesterol, why don't we lower it? So I took two groups. I took one group and lowered it by diet. I took the other group, we used this new drug, which we now call a statin, but at that time an experimental compound. And the group that both were lowered to low cholesterol, but the statin group didn't have heart attacks or strokes. The other ones did, meaning that the quality of the cholesterol was more important than the mere number. This was research by combining the science of the time to a patient need. And really, that's what global health is. Because I began to look and see what happens when the cholesterol becomes unstable. And on the right, you can see I took a 150-year-old technology called Doppler, and I could measure when an embolus hit the brain. And from that, I knew when they were having the miniature events. I can even hear the embolus going by. And so this began to be the research. I began to understand what my patient need was. And then an amazing, life-changing event took place in my life. I was asked to join a team which was building houses in Guatemala, but I would provide the medical care, and I would try to observe and change. And I went. It was the most fulfilling experience of my life. It had tremendous impact on me. I was learning, but very little lasting impact on the patients, even though I saw hundreds, because I began to be quiet, to look and listen. And I discovered that the developing world was urbanizing. They were emptying the rural areas onto the cities, overwhelming the cities, causing complete breakdown in transportation, food, and medical distribution. In other words, I could not simply go and give medicines to somebody and expect to change things unless I wanted to change the infrastructure as well. And I learned a very important lesson. I learned that I could not be effective in global health without partnering with people that would avoid wars. This was the time of the Guatemalan Civil War. It was a time of great danger. This gentleman here has just stuck his rifle through the window of my clinic. You will be told if you go into nursing or medicine, do a focused exam. I assure you, nothing focuses my exam more than having a rifle pointed at me. But we got out of that situation because of the grace of our friends. And I began to learn lessons. And I began to understand that I could not simply go and serve alone. It wasn't enough. There's no way I could take care of 11 million people. But I educated doctors. That's what I was doing. That's what I was good at. And I began to realize when I saw this young lady, in this picture, John knows, sits in my office. This young lady was healthy that day when I was in her village providing medical care. And I said, who will care for her later when she is ill and I'm not here? And that's the day I started to train doctors. And so my service became education, and I learned that from global health. And so I changed. I went to a country with more stability, Ecuador. I took my family, and it became part of what we did. And I began to work in an area. First, I needed to be invited. It would be no good for me to drop in and just say, here, I know what you need. I don't. I must stop and listen. Second, I realized service alone was unsustainable. Education. So doctors trained doctors, anesthesiologists trained anesthesiologists, nurses trained nurses. We began to build a team. We had a cooperative middle class with some opportunity, and they wished to improve their lower class, their low and middle income people. And so we partnered with them. We could not do it alone. And we worked very hard to make the project their project with our help, not me parachuting in with a logo on the side of my Jeep and a flag saying I'm some organization of importance, come to us, but rather listen, what do you need? And I mean listen to everyone. These are my children at that age. They had so much to teach me because they were the eyes and ears. They recognized nonverbal things that I didn't. People would tell me one thing. They would say, that child is dirty, this family's unhappy, this person is limping, look. And I listened to even the children, and they taught me so much to teach. My daughter taught herself Spanish and took over the recovery room. As a child, she would run and say, this child needs help. They would say, go get your father. And she would run. And I began to learn if we were to solve the transportation problem, we had to distribute health care, and we had to bring it to the people who were abandoned in the rural areas of the country. And I began to teach person by person, and I began to partner. I had to involve the Ecuadorian doctors until they took ownership of the program, and now they have, and now they train their own, and they don't need me. And that's the ideal role of a teacher, is to have your students take over. That's what you want. There are always great challenges. Literally, volcanoes erupting outside the hospital, natural disasters, dysentery, government overthrows, insurrections, lack of supplies, theft. This is life. This is normal. If you go into medicine, if you go into neurosurgery, there will be great challenges. But we face those challenges, we overcome them. And this is a lesson learned by presence and partnership from Global Health. Yet it's so important to what you do every day. Because every day as a doctor, I see patients. And I may think I know what they need, but I have first be quiet. Look, listen, learn. I try to watch them walk down the hall to the room because I want to see, is their head up? Are they confident? Are they sad? Are they limping? Partner, I can't do it alone. If I have a patient in need, I get the best anesthesiologist, the best radiologist, the best partners so that we can provide care and post-op care. Service, education, research, they are all patient care. They're not separate. And that's the reason I do research, because my patients need it. Some people do research because they are fascinated by that. They are scientists. I'm a physician scientist. That's different. And I learned from Global Health, tackle big problems that affect many. That may be whole country needs, or that may be stroke or cancer. Huge, huge issues, trauma that affect patients everywhere. So what about my regular job? I'm a vascular neurosurgeon, and I wasn't decreasing stroke at all. So what I needed to do was listen and partner to the science of the time. And by now it became genomics. And I went to the scientists that are working on tumors and said, you're doing the genes that cause the normal tissue to become a tumor. I said, yes. I said, could we do the genes that cause the vessel wall to become diseased or to become unstable and break apart? Why not? So we did. And we found 247 genes differentially regulated when a person began to have their strokes. And these were fascinating. The vessel wall became a neoplasm. The atherosclerotic plaque would grow. It would require new vessels to keep up with that growth. And those new vessels were fragile, but they could be treated. You could change vessels. The tumor doctors were doing it. We could do it in stroke. And we began to understand that the genes of this vessel aging were the same genes we saw in brain degeneration, Alzheimer's, ALS, Huntington's. They were similar genes. This was really a systemic disease of aging of the brain. And this suggested treatment options. And so the science had changed. I now no longer simply looked at just the atherosclerosis shown here in color inside the vessel shown here, blocking the lumen down, but I looked and saw with medical physics, non-invasively, when the vessel became unstable. These are the strain lines every time it pulsates. And if I measured those, I could predict the likelihood of it breaking loose and going to the brain or causing deficits. And those deficits included cognition, a direct linear relationship. The more the vessel began to break apart, the more the patient were cognitively declined. We had discovered a new and much more important, because my patients would give up the use of an arm if they could know their grandchildren. Cognition is that important to our elders. They are our history, they are our language. And we had discovered that this was essential for big problems. And could the emboli be reversed? Well, partner, because breaking up emboli is really a biochemical thing. If you get an embolus to your arm vessel, it usually is dissolved as you make plasminogen to plasmin and break up the fibrin in the clot. You do that naturally. It just happens too slowly in the brain, but that's really a biochemical problem. We went to the scientist of the time working on biochemistry and imaging, and this is 1997. A 41-year-old school teacher comes in. This is her right internal carotid. This is her anterior cerebral vessel to the middle of the brain. There is no middle cerebral vessel to the majority of this half of the brain. Now, in 1997, this was a fatal stroke. We were not decompressing strokes as we do in this time. And the patient literally would say, am I going to be like this? And to your mind, you'd say, you're probably going to die. But then we remembered that's science. And we took a catheter and brought it here, punched holes in the clot, and delivered our drug. And the vessel opened up. And the arm came back, the leg came back, and the patient went home to her husband and child. This was miraculous. It's wonderful. It was not. The drug wasn't good enough. But the technique, that's what I saw. I saw that we were bringing catheters to clots and could break them up. And at that point, I began to move to make sure that every neurosurgeon was trained in these catheter techniques, not because they were going to put coils in aneurysms, a small medical problem, but because they were going to deliver drugs or stents or retrievers or growth factors to repair the brain to the brain. So this technique needed to be known to them. And 17 years later, it became part of the training in the United States. To do that, I had to become one of the people who set the rules for how you were trained in the United States. And I demanded that everyone be trained in endovascular and critical care because that's the patient need. And in 2015, 4 studies showed that as many as 40% of large strokes in the middle cerebral artery could be reversed by pulling the clot out with a retriever, endovascularly. This revolutionized cerebrovascular neurosurgery. We were literally in tears at the meeting. People were standing on chairs and congratulating each other because a lifetime of work we had changed. And where did I learn this? Listen, partner, create, and go do what the need is. Well, what about global health? Around this time, tackling big problems, this group you've heard about today, the Foundation for International Education and Neurological Surgery, approached me and they said, I understand you're training doctors in specialties in developing countries. Could you help us? Oh, by the way, it's a big problem. We've noticed that East Sub-Saharan Africa had 400 million people without neurosurgical training. Nobody being trained. A minimal number of people trying to care for them, which meant there's no trauma service. There's no care for cancer. There's no care for stroke. There's no care for congenital anomalies of children or pain. Could you help? Gulp. Yes, I'll try. So I joined this group and we went to Africa and we went to our new friends and partners in Kenya and we saw a familiar story. 37 million people collapsing on one hospital in the capital for their neurosurgical care. That hospital had 3,000 beds and 5,000 patients, meaning that if you had a brain tumor in Mombasa, you would sell your store, leave your farm, sit under the jacaranda tree in Nairobi and hope that you were the lucky one that was picked by the one competent doctor to do surgery and successfully take care of your brain tumor. Your chances were almost zero. So I partnered with a brilliant person, Moody Qureshi, who said, let's do this. Let's every month set up a clinic in major cities. This city, 4 million people, this 4 million people. And let's do neurosurgery there. A couple cases, train the nurses, get the town, the hospital, the supplies ready, so that as we graduate candidates from the training program you, Dr. Dempsey, will help us set the curriculum for, we can cite them in their home city where they will become the people that establish and decentralize this care. So we started, and it's gone well. We found we had to develop infrastructure, neuropathology. Well, we can train them with the science of our time, which is the internet, in constant communication. Look at slides together. Radiology, equipment, donation of microscopes, drills, teach them. Do the first aneurysm in that country, teach them, build an ICU. It is the science of the time which linked people together. And what happened? Multiple partners were drawn in. That could be government, that could be universities, that could be whole countries, because that's the way we get equipment. And we go and listen, because a dyad was formed. A university like University of Wisconsin would dyad with Kenya in a particular hospital, understand the needs, help supply the equipment and the trainers until we had trained enough Kenyans that they would train each other. This is the president of Tanzania, the day that he said he would put 15% of his budget into healthcare if we would help them organize it. That's better than I get in the United States. These are the Japanese when they said, we will come and we will help. These are the Spanish doctors when they said, we'll build an entire hospital if you can help staff it and teach there. And this brought care where there had been none in Zanzibar. And then science changed it. In 2015, the Lancet Commission on Global Surgery, using their science, which is called GIS, these are the geographers which map where things are, food, resources, water, or healthcare. And using that, they said there are 5 billion, that's a B, billion worldwide that lack essential healthcare. And to close that gap would save 47 million lives. That's 8 times more than COVID takes. And this is an essential need, as essential to have access to general and basic and neurosurgery that could save your life and return you to productive life as having clean water or antibiotics or access to care. And they said, how do we solve that? Well, if we parachute doctors like me into a country to do 100 surgeries, it's a drop in the bucket. If we take the best and brightest from that country, bring them to London or Taiwan, they're not going to go back because there isn't the equipment and infrastructure back home. They realized somebody needs to train surgeons in their country and supply the infrastructure and an ongoing self-sustaining program. Who does that? Next thing I know, I'm flying to Geneva. And the World Health Organization unanimously declared essential surgery a global priority. It never happens. I was asked to join that commission. I said, only if they do one on stroke. They looked into it and said, you're right. Stroke will devastate the developing world in the next decade. It'll surpass infection because in low and middle income countries, it'll be the #1 cause of death and disability. So now I'm on 2 commissions, but I'm glad. And so we've worked with partners, over 27 sites now worldwide, which we link with web-based, even during the pandemic, didactic lectures, integrative teaching, equipment, grants, and training scholarships to partner worldwide until countries become self-sustaining. Our trainees in Uganda are now training their trainees. We have hundreds in training where there were none, and we don't dummy it down. If we do graduate education in the United States, we do it there. We do this specialized boot camp where everyone in the U.S. gets the same training. We said, let's do it in South America. We started in 2015. followed by programs in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Myanmar, Bolivia, Chile. And then when COVID came, we took it online and continued this work. And great destabilizing forces still remain. They always will. Poverty, war, COVID, pandemic. But these are the challenges of healthcare. This is what we do. We take 2 steps forward, 1 back, and we overcome challenges. Because there'll always be these needs. I'm fine with that. But I want to encourage you to never let challenge stop you in your training or in your large picture or small. And what about the science? Well, we had done wonders on prevention and even acute treatment of stroke. But what about the millions that have had their stroke and are disabled? Well, I think it's incumbent on us to look at regeneration of the brain. And my lab is doing that. We do neuroprosthetics, brain-computer interface. We look at transplant, but that won't happen in my lifetime. But we look really at how does the brain heal. And it does it, again, look at your genomics, by recapitulating the way you made your brain as a fetus. These are the primitive neural cells near the ventricle growing into a stroke. But your brain turns that off, thinking it's a brain tumor. And I've been looking at the genes that are upregulated after a stroke and discovered these are the growth factors that made the brain and how they are regulated. By looking at the regulation, we can leave that on for 3 weeks and then turn it off before it becomes a tumor to repopulate the neurons in that area. Because I fully believe our next future is the people that are disabled, degenerative brain diseases. And we can provide that because our research shows the similarity between the tumors and the brain and the way the brain is made. It's a matter of understanding the growth factors and regulating them. And this is the examples of that discover the growth factors for blood vessels, for tumors, etc. So we must take the lead, not only prevention, not only acute treatment, but repair. And we have the techniques to do it. And each year, our colleagues invent new techniques. That's what research is. Teaching is spreading this. Well, what about how do you bring this all together during a pandemic? Well, patients, where is the need? I do stroke research. I do global health. Global health to me is truly global. It includes your own country, your own backyard, the indigenous people that you may find on Taiwan. Well, in my country, the #1 population for stroke risk factors are Native Americans living on reservations. These are common in my region, in my state. So I was invited by the elders of the tribe to go and listen to the council of this tribe of Native Americans. And they said their concern was stroke and their elders losing their cognition, their language, their history. I said, well, that's what I do. Let's partner. But first I listened because they had so much to teach me about holistic health. And I learned from that. And we have developed a program. I run the program for the Native Americans on their stroke risk factors. I go visit and listen on the reservation monthly. And it's changed my career and my life for the better. And so what did I learn in this whole process? What did I learn all this time? Some very basic, important things. #1, great medical people, doctors, nurses, technicians, are in love with what they do. They did not pay any attention when their classmates said, don't go into medicine, it's too hard, the hours are too long. I've never worked a day in my life since I left the loading docks in Chicago because this isn't work, this is what I love to do. I can't believe they pay me to do this. And that's the attitude you want to have. Abraham Lincoln said, folks are about as happy as they make up their mind to be. Great doctors are creative. They see a patient need, they apply and partner with the great people around them, and they bring science to that. We invent new ways to treat degenerative disorders of the brain, new ways to teach worldwide. We can now enter the operating room video in Vietnam, and assist the patient with our virtual hand coming into the scene because of our virtual AI glasses. And our genomics people are finding more and more clues to health and disease. Great doctors are teachers. In Latin, the word doctor means teacher. You do not simply settle for the way you were taught. You do it better. And you teach your patient. You teach them to understand their disorder thoroughly so they take ownership for their health. You teach them about their surgeries so they're not frightened. And they come and they do better and they get out of bed and they know their responsibilities of their care. Great doctors have integrity. This is from the Latin word for whole. It means they care for the entire patient, not just the brain, but the brain, the heart, the diabetes, not just the medical conditions, but the social, not just the people in front of you, but the people that don't have access to care. That's what global health teaches you, that you take care of everyone. And great doctors are great people who really like their patients and wish to do better for them. That is the basic principle. And how do you do that? How do you maintain that? Go back to what your parents taught you. I value patience, family, and faith or values. Patients are everyone. That includes the biomedical person who's going to be part of your team. Are they okay? Are you looking after them? That includes the patient and the family who may be devastated by the illness of their elder. And family, your family, it could be your blood relatives, but it could also be the trusted people who are honest with you and will tell you when you're off base and will bring you back. That you never lose sight of. And values, those are the lessons learned that you value what you will do and how you will live your life. Set aside time for these. Have the trusted people who are honest with you and serve patients when you learn from them and teach. So in the end, what I ask of you all aspiring to go into medicine, be it as nurses, as doctors, as biomedical people, as technicians, as administrators, is define yourself by your actions. Learn by listening, and then partner and act creatively. That's what research is. Teach, and that means pay attention and make their world better so they understand their illness and leave this world better than you found it. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity to talk to you today, to tell you my story, and to hope that you are beginning to write your story right now about what you will do in this wonderful field we call medicine, where you can do so much for people if you take time to listen to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dempsey. That's an amazing and inspiring story, and really touches on so much of your career and your highlights. And it's very much why we consider you a master teacher and role model for all of us.
Thank you, John.
I believe we have some time for questions. I know there's many people online, and please enter your questions in the chat if we can address some during a little bit of time left. And I know Dr. Yang, Professor Yang and Professor Ma are on the ground there in the lecture hall.
So
Perhaps
any
I will
questions
start.
from the floor? Any questions from the floor? Any questions for Dr. Dempsey?
While we're waiting for a question, maybe I can ask one for our students. How do you think, as students, especially here in Taiwan, can get started in some aspect of global health if they want to contribute?
I have looked to the patients around me, right? In my own backyard, indigenous communities nearby, that you could be active in, that you could, as a student, start to work with. Even as a young student, I worked at the Children's Hospital just off the edge of my campus. And I began to understand that global health was everywhere. I think it's very important as the pandemic decreases, and that's important, that seeing the needs elsewhere are important. But I think it's important to join a group, usually from the university, that would be providing the care. For example, our university provides that for students in an environment that we think is safe. Their food is clean, etc. There's a relative freedom from war and danger. So I would participate, I would volunteer as a student, and I did. And it was transformative for me. And I started, literally I could walk to the area of need from my campus. And I suspect you'll find that's true as well. And then it became indigenous groups, and then it became worldwide. But I could not have done the worldwide work unless I had started locally. And I think that's very true. And that's why the talk was very purposefully to say, lessons I learned applied in my clinic, in my laboratory, in my teaching.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dempsey. Are there questions in the audience before we
So, Dr.
do a
Dempsey,
short-
I would like to ask you a question. Students may wonder, you were born with gifts, so you will learn by listening. You will act creatively and teach. But they think they may not be born with the same gifts as you do. Then how could we also learn like you do?
Well, I think everyone is gifted. I have very, very many deficits and faults. And I really try to work on my strengths. There are things that John may know that I cannot do, which are normal for the students around you, and I need their help. And their gift may be computer skills. But you see how important that is in global health right now, and how those people could act with joy. I gave the example of the carpenter. That was his gift, and he changed lives by the joy he brought to it and the service, and he did do work for free. I think we all are capable of that, and it is our own responsibility to find our strengths, not to try to copy somebody else. We all wish that we could play baseball with great skill. We're only average. And the skilled people we admire, but we do other things better. And I think that's really the answer. And our strength comes by partnering. So those lessons apply to everyone. And what I'm saying is, don't sell yourself short. I'm full of deficits. But that's okay. It's made me a better person.
Right, so we were all born with a certain gifts. So show confidence in yourself. I think we all learn from Dr. Dempsey. One day we may all become Dr. Dempsey and help people.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's very true, and I think the day is today. There's no reason to wait. And if you really look at as a student, if you look at what you're doing, you have chosen the highest profession, in my opinion, in the world, because you do serve. You serve with science and education, but you serve an essential need. Healthcare is essential to peace in this world, and it's the way I can. Other people have diplomatic skills, and I need them to end terrible wars, but I can provide healthcare, and I believe that is an essential element of peace. But I need to partner with the others. So I try to be very positive about a peacetime army or a government that wishes to provide peace, because we need them. Without them, I'm doing the unsuccessful work I started in Guatemala because it was unstable.
So I think we all learned from Dr. Dempsey, we need to be positive and optimistic. and then we could, one day we could achieve what Dr. Dempsey has achieved today.
Thank you. Thank you. Do the students have any questions?
So, we need to come up questions. Anyone want to volunteer to come up with one question? You are so creative. Yeah, Dr. Dempsey just teach you be creative. So brainstorm and come up with one great question. Yep. Anyone? You should be smarter than I am. Oh, yeah, we have one question. That's great. Yeah. Give him applause, okay?
Hello. Thank you for the wonderful speech today. And I was so influenced by you. And I would like to know one thing. Like, do you have any goals for the future? Like, do you have any things to achieve?
Thank you. Thank you. You are a very brave student. Thank you. I do. And I have goals. I have goals for the people I teach. You know that our work, I will operate on thousands of people, but the people I teach, millions, and people aren't even born yet. My goals are for those people that I teach, for them to be great. And it's fine if they forget me. That is probably the best for a teacher, is to be surpassed by their students. So yes, I very much have a goal to make certain my students surpass me and do far more. That would be wonderful if I could pass that on. I know I've succeeded in some countries. I know there's so many people I'm proud of, and I wish to be very proud of you as well. For maybe I helped motivate you a little bit today. That would be a very good goal for me.
So I think we are all motivated by Dr. Dempsey. So any other students who want to come up with another creative question? Anyone?
So I'm going to ask a question of them. What about your family? You noticed at the beginning and the end, I talked about what my parents had taught me. In the middle, I talked about my children. You see, you are going into a very busy specialty as well. And if you remember that family is one of those three tenets that keep me going, you'll never lose sight of that. So you must take time for that family. I wish I took more time, but I take a lot for them. And it's very important. So I would challenge you each to stop and think about that. What is your family? And it may be your partner, it may be your dearest friends. It certainly, I hope, includes parents and siblings. Take time for them, because they will correct you, they will point you in the right direction, they will give you that moral code. So that's my challenge there for our students.
That's great. So we have a holiday coming in a few days. So students, you should go home to spend more time with your family in the next 4 days. Yeah. Anyone want to come up with one question for Dr. Dempsey? Hey, young man. We are waiting. Any other question? One more. Just one more. We have 300 brains here. Just come up with one question. Do you think that's so difficult? Oh, you can ask in Chinese and I can translate it into English. I think I have that ability. You can ask in Chinese and I translate it into English. Anyone want to ask? Sorry.
our students.
Oh, I was just reminded by Dean Moore. She told me we are running out of time. We need to go upstairs. So I think let's thank Dr. Dempsey for his fantastic presentation again. Thank you very much, Dr. Dempsey.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone.
So I think on behalf of China Medical University and Asian University and Vice President Zhang Guo, we would like to present a thank you gift to you. And this will be sent it to you via Federal Express. But physically, I would like to show this to you in front of the TV.
No. I thank you. I'm not able to see the gift, but the real gift has been your presence. And the real gift will be what you do with the information. And that's, I thank you. There, I see.
There it is.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very, very kind. And I love the picture of the nation as well. That's great. Thank you. I will, John, I will go to the other section now. Okay.
Yep, so
Okay,
I think we will move to upstairs, and please join the interaction forum section. Thank you so much. We will see you in 5 minutes. Let's thank Dr. Dempsey again. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I wish you the very best.
Thank you, you too. Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Thank you.
.没有办法进问卷的，前面有 QR code， 然后视讯场地的同学们，我们就是请视讯场地的同仁帮忙协助。那可以填到8点45分，再麻烦大家。